Good day, sir. I am Sila Joyce D. Simborio, and my topic is all about internal combustion engine power generator. So, nabilong ni siya sa Chapter 13, Part 2. So, standby diesel generator shall be installed in compliance with the NFPA 37 standards. So, its purpose and scope. This standard applies to fire safety for the installation and operation of stationary combustion engines and gas turbines not exceeding 7,500 horsepower per unit. This standard applies also to portable engines that remain connected for use in the same location for a period of 1 week or more, and that are used instead to supplement stationary engines. Note that for engines exceeding 7,500 horsepower, see NFPA 850. This standard does not apply to engines used to propel any mobile structure. So its special application, engines used to drive fire pumps shall comply with this standard, and those contained in NFPA 20, standard for the installation of centrifugal fire pumps. In cases where provisions of NFPA 20 differ with those in this document, the provisions in NFPA 20 shall take precedence. Engines used in essential electrical systems in healthcare facilities shall comply with this standard, and any special provisions contained in NFPA 99, standard for healthcare facilities. 1322.0 Discretionary powers of authority having jurisdiction. Nothing in this document is intended to prevent the use of systems, methods, or devices of equivalent or superior quality, strength, fire resistance, effectiveness, durability, and safety to those prescribed by this document, provided technical documentation is submitted to the authority having jurisdiction to demonstrate equivalency and the system, method, or device is approved for intended purpose. So here are the official NFPA definitions. First, shall means indicates a mandatory requirement. Approved means acceptable to the authority having jurisdiction. Labeled means equipment or materials to which has been attached a label, symbol, or other identifying mark of an organization that is acceptable to the authority having jurisdiction and concerned with product evaluation that maintains periodic inspection of production of labeled equipment. Should means indicate a recommendation or that which is advised but not required. Authority having jurisdiction means the organization, office, or individual responsible for approving equipment, an installation, or a procedure. Listed means equipment or materials included in a list published by an organization acceptable to the authority having jurisdiction and concerned with product evaluation that maintains periodic inspection of production of listed equipment. So here are the definition of terms used in this standard. Engines means prime movers such as internal combustion engines, external combustion engines, gas engines using either gaseous fuels or liquid fuels or combinations. Engines portable. Engines mounted on skids, wheels, or otherwise arranged so that they can be moved from place to place as the required service indicates. Flue gas temperatures means the temperatures of the flue products at the point or points of passing close to or through combustible materials or at the entrance to a chimney, whichever is applicable. Gallon, 1 US gallon is equals to 3.785 liters. Hazardous locations means for purposes of this document, areas where flammable or combustible gases or liquids or combustible dust or flying normally exist. Horsepower rating. Reciprocating engines. The power of an engine measured at the flywheel or output shaft at standard SAE conditions of 752.1 mmHg barometer at 25 degrees Celsius inlet air temperature in accordance with SAE J1349. Engine power task code, spark ignition, and diesel. Gas turbine engines. The ANSI standard rated power of an engine at the output shaft at 14.696 pounds per square inch absolute at 59 degree Fahrenheit and a relative humidity of 60% in accordance with ANSI B133.6 procurement standard for gas turbine ratings and performance. Spark protected. Electrical equipment enclosed in a tight case or protected by shields, screens, or insulation that will contain sparks or prevent their emission. Tank day. A fuel oil tank located inside a structure that provides fuel to the engine. Tank enclosed. A fuel tank located within a separate room, separated from other equipment. Tank integral. A fuel oil tank furnished by the engine manufacturer and mounted on the engine. Tank supply. A separate fuel tank or supplying fuel to the engine or to a day tank. Tank unenclosed. A fuel tank not located in a separate room. PISG, pressure in pounds per square inch gauge. So, 1324.0 about engines. Engines with or without their weatherproof housings that are attached to the engine subbase shall be permitted to be installed outdoors, inside structures, or on roofs of structures. Engines and weatherproof housing, if provided, that are installed outdoors or outdoors on roofs of structures shall be located at least 5 feet from openings in wall and at least 3 feet from structures having combustible adjacent walls. Engines rated at more than 50 horsepower shall be located in accordance with 1324.1.1.1 or shall be installed in detached structures reversed exclusively for the purpose or in rooms within or attached to other structures. Detached structures shall be of non-combustible or fire-resistive construction. Provision shall be made for venting a fuel explosion with minimum structural damage or ventilation adequate to prevent a hazardous accumulation of flammable vapors or gases shall be provided both when the engine is in operating or shut down. Rooms located within structures shall have interior walls, floors, and ceilings of at least 1 hour fire resistance rating. Openings in the engine room that open into other sections of structure shall be provided with automatic or self-closing fire doors or dampers to confine a fire to the engine room. Rooms attached structures shall comply with 1324.1.1.2.1 except that the common wall shall have a fire resistance rating of at least 1 hour. Openings in the engine room that open into the interior of a structure shall be provided with automatic or self-closing fire doors or dampers. All engines shall have adequate emergency lighting as well as normal lighting. Engines shall be situated so that they are readily accessible for maintenance, repair, and firefighting. Provision shall be made to supply sufficient air for combustion, proper cooling, and adequate ventilation. Air provided shall be sufficient to prevent flue gas products from being drawn from stocks or flues of boilers or other combustion devices in the same room used to exhaust combustion products. Requirements for air vary with the types and sizes of engines, the driven equipment, other air-consuming equipment in the room, and the nature of the engine room. Combustible materials shall not be located in room housing an engine. Foundations. Engine shall be supported on firm foundations or suitable steel framework properly secured. Roof protection. If an engine is mounted on a roof, the surface beneath the engine and beyond the engine to a minimum distance of 12 inch shall be of a minimum 1 hour fire resistive rating. Hazardous locations. In hazardous locations, engines not compressing a flammable gas or not pumping a flammable liquid shall be installed in an enclosure of fire-resistive construction, well ventilated from a non-hazardous outside area and with outside access only. Units handling hazardous materials. The use of integral engine-driven unit compressing a flammable gas or pumping a flammable liquid is permitted, provided the combination unit or groups of such combined units are suitable isolated from areas not having a similar hazard. Isolation shall be permitted to be achieved by location outdoors or by indoor structural separation in accordance with 1324.1.1.2, except that indoor installation shall also comply with 1324.5.1.1 through 1324.5.1.3. Provision shall be made for venting an explosion with minimum structural damage. Rooms containing combustion engines located within structures shall have interior walls, floors, and ceilings of at least 2 hours fire resistance rating. Such a room or structure shall be ventilated in an approved manner from a non-hazardous area. H. Spark ignition engine comprising part of a unit for compressing a flammable gas or pumping a flammable liquid shall have magnetors or distributors and coils for the spark-protected type and have all leads positively attached. Ventilation openings in such devices shall be adequately protected by a fire screen unless the device is purged, pressurized, or otherwise protected. Ignition wire shall be positively attached at each end by use of the outer sheet of the insulation. Spark plugs shall be fully shielded against flashover. Fully radio-shielded spark plugs or spark plugs provided with insulating boots are acceptable. Flame arresting equipment shall be attached securely to the engine air intake to avoid blow-off or rupture. A firmly fixed air filter shall be considered as meeting this requirement. Starter, generator, and associated electrical equipment attached to engines shall be of the spark-protected type. Batteries, wiring, and electrical protective devices shall be protected against flashover and accidental shorting. Means shall be provided for shutting down the engine at a readily accessible location remote from the engine. Next is the electrical installations. Electrical installations in rooms containing engines shall comply with NFPA 70. Engines, rooms, or other locations shall not be classified as hazardous locations as defined in Article 500 of NFPA 70. Engine protective devices. All engines, each engine shall have an automatic engine speed governor. Engines to 10 horsepower or more, engines of 10 horsepower or more shall be equipped with the device specified in 1325.1 and the following additional protection shall be provided. An automatic engine shall device for high jacket water temperature or high cylinder temperature. Next is an automatic engine shutdown device for low lubricating oil pressure or in the case of a splash lubricated engine for low level. Next, if an engine is intended for emergency use only or is constantly attended, an alarm should be permissible of devices specified in A and B. Next, engines of 100 horsepower or more shall have the devices specified in 1325.1 and 1325.2 and the following additional protection shall be provided. An automatic engine shutdown device for engine overspeed. Next is an automatic engine shutdown device for high lubricating oil temperature. Next, some means of shutting down the engine at readily accessible location remote from the engine. A remote means of shutting off the fuel supply. A remote means of shutting down lubricating oil pumps not directly driven by the engine. Exception, gas turbines in excess of 1000 horsepower. And lastly, if the engine is intended for emergency use only or is constantly attended, an alarm shall be permissible in lieu of the engine shutdown device specified in B. Next is gas turbines. Gas turbine engines shall be equipped with the devices specified in 1325.1, 1325.2, and 1325.3, and the following additional protection shall be provided. An automatic engine shutdown device for high exhaust temperatures. Next, a means of shutting off the fuel supply in the event of flame out. Next, if a turbine is intended for emergency use only or constantly attended, an alarm shall be permissible in lieu of a device specified. And lastly, so next, 1325.4.2, the turbine starting sequence shall include a purge cycle adequate to ensure a non-flammable atmosphere in the turbine and exhaust system prior to ignition. 1325.5, diesel engines. Diesel engines 100 horsepower or more installed in hazardous locations shall be equipped with an additional protective measure. Next, fuel supply for gas-fueled engines. Except as provided in 1326.1.2 and 1326.1.3, gas piping shall be installed in accordance with the appropriate standards cited in 1326.1.1.1 through 1326.1.1.3. So, all fuel gases other than LP gas in the liquid phase at surface pressures of 861.8 kilopascal and less shall be installed in accordance with NFPA 54 and NFPA 58 and NFPA 58. All fuel gases other than LP gas in the liquid phase at service pressure in excess of 861.8 kilopascal should be installed in accordance with ANSI or ASME B31.1 power piping and NFPA 58. Standard for discharge and handling of liquefied petroleum gases. LP gas in the liquid phase shall be installed in accordance with NFPA 58. Plastic pipe carrying fuel shall not be used in a structure housing an engine or engines. The use of approved metallic flexible connectors for protection against damage caused by settlement, vibration, expansion, contraction, or corrosion shall be acceptable except for LP gas in the liquid phase. If flexible connectors are located so that they might be exposed for a fire or short duration, the approval should consider the ability of the connector to stand up under such conditions. LP gas supply system shall be installed in accordance with the appropriate provisions of NFPA 58. Next is regulators. A gas pressure regulator located inside a structure shall be provided with either a vent to the outside of the structure and discharge at least 5 feet away from any structure opening or a listed vent limiting device. So, na siya exception, any regulator or zero governor that operates with gas pressure on both sides of the diaphragm shall not require venting. When the gas pressure in the upstream side of the regulator is more than 1/2 pound square inch gauge, a relief valve should be installed on the downstream side of the regulator. Relief valve should be connected to the outside of the structure and shall discharge at least 5 feet away from any structure opening, and such relief valves and any connected piping shall be sized to vent the required volume of gas. Gas piping to engines shall have an approved shut-off valve remote from the engine and preferably outside the structure. If the valve is locked open, the key shall be secured in a well-marked accessible location near the valve. Every gas engine shall have a carburation valve, zero governor type regulating valve, fuel control valve, or an auxiliary valve that will automatically shut off the flow of gas in case the engine stops from any cause. Automatically started or unattended engines shall be provided with a fuel control valve or an auxiliary valve that will stop the flow of gas in case the engine stops for any cause. A zero governor type regulator alone shall not be adequate protection in such installations. The auxiliary valve should be installed ahead of any unlisted flexible connector to the carburation valve, zero governor, or other controls. Pressure boosting equipment. Where pressure gas flow is supplied and pressure boosting equipment is required, compressors shall be receivers approved for the service intended. Where required, shall be designed, constructed, and tested in accordance with the ASME Boiler and Pressure Vessel Code, Section 8, Division 1, Pressure Vessels. Fuel supply for liquid fuel engines. Design and construction of liquid fuel tanks. Integral tanks shall be of steel with welded or braced joints. Day tanks shall be of steel with welded joints constructed with the following thickness. Minimum thickness of the steel, if 10 or less gallons, ang gamiton nga gauge number is 18. While if 11 to 180 gallons, 16 gauge number. 181 to 275, gauge number 14. 276 to 550, gauge number 12. So, tanks in this category that are listed are labeled inside storage tanks for all burner fuel shall be considered as meeting these provisions. Outside above ground or underground fuel supply tanks shall be constructed in accordance with the applicable tank specification NFPA 30 Flammable and Combustible Liquids Code. Underground tanks smaller than 2,500 gallons capacity that are listed unlabeled as underground tanks or for flammable liquids. Above ground tanks that are listed unlabeled above ground tanks for flammable liquids and tanks constructed in accordance with API 650 welded steel tanks for all storage shall be considered as meeting this provision. Underground tanks and piping containing flammable liquids shall comply with all federal, state, and local regulations. Fuel tanks for gasoline. Only integral tanks shall be permitted inside or on roofs of structures. An integral tank shall not exceed 25 gallons capacity and not more than one tank shall be installed on each engine. The tank shall be securely mounted on the engine assembly, protected against vibration, physical damage, engine heat, and the heat of exhaust piping. Tanks other than integral tanks shall be located underground or above ground outside of structures. Other requirements for day and supply tanks such as construction, minimum distance from any line of adjoining property that might be built upon, spacing, dikes, foundations, supports, depths and cover, anchorage, and normal emergency vents and testing shall be in accordance with the applicable provision on NFPA 30. Fuel tanks for diesel and fuel oils. Not more than one integral tank shall be installed on each engine. It shall be securely mounted on the engine assembly, protective against vibration, physical damage, engine heat, and the heat of exhaust piping. Fuel tanks inside structures. Day or supply tanks inside structures shall be securely mounted on substantial non-combustible supports. Tanks not used for emergency purposes. An enclosed day tank located above the lowest story, cellar, or basement shall not exceed 60 gallons capacity, and the total capacity of these tanks so located shall not exceed 60 gallons. An enclosed day or supply tank located in the lowest story, cellar, or basement shall comply with 1327.3.2.3. Tanks used for emergency purposes. Unenclosed day tanks are supply tanks supplying engines that drive generators, alternators, fire pumps, or other equipment used for emergency purposes shall not exceed 660 gallons, not more than enclosed 660 gallons capacity tank or two or more unenclosed tanks with an aggregate capacity of not more than 660 gallons shall be connected to one engine. The aggregate capacity of all unenclosed day and supply tanks in a building shall not exceed 1,320 gallons. Day and supply tanks with individual capacities larger than 660 gallons or those tanks that cause the unenclosed aggregate capacity to exceed 1,320 gallons in a building shall be enclosed in accordance with 1,327.3.5. Unenclosed tanks larger than 60 gallons aggregate capacity used for emergency purposes described in 1327.3.2.3.1 shall not be used for any other purpose. Unenclosed day or supply tanks located above the lowest story, cellar, or basement shall have either a wall, curb, or dike having a capacity at least equal to that of the largest surrounded tank, or a wall, curb, or dike of lesser capacity equipped with the overflow or drainage system that shall be adequate in size and location to convey any spillage of fuel tank or to a safe area outside the structure. Fuel tanks outdoors. Supply tanks located outside, above, or underground or beneath a structure shall comply with applicable provisions on NFPA 30. Fuel tanks on roofs. Day or supply tanks on roofs shall be securely mounted on substantial non-combustible supports. Unenclosed day supply tanks located on roofs shall have either a wall, curve, or dike having a capacity at least equal to that of the largest rounded tank, or a wall, curve, or dike of lesser capacity equipped with an overflow or drainage system that shall be adequate in size and location to convey any spillage of fuel to a tank or to safe areas outside the structure. Day or supply tanks not used for emergency purposes shall meet the size limitations of 1327.3.2.3.1. Rooms housing only fuel tanks. Rooms containing only tanks shall be constructed of walls, floor, and top having a fire resistance rating of not less than 3 hours with the walls bonded to the floor. If the walls of such rooms extended to and are bonded to the underside of a concrete floor or roof above which has a fire resistance rating or not less than 3 hours, a separate top is not required for the room. At least 15 inches clearance shall be left around the tank for the purpose of inspection and repair. Each tank room shall be provided with an opening that is closed by a self-closing Class A fire door if it opens inside a building. If a door opening goes outside, an appropriate door shall be provided based on exposure presented. Opening shall be protected by a ramp or seal high enough to contain the entire contents of the tank within the walls to the height corresponding to the level of oil that will be retained, and the seal shall be built to withstand the lateral pressure due to liquid head, and walls and floor shall be waterproof. In lieu of this, a drain to a properly sized underground tank is permissible. Provision shall be made for adequate ventilation of such room prior to entering for inspection or repair of tanks. Room shall be equipped with an open vent or automatically operated vent terminating outside the building. Next is fuel flow control. Liquid fuel supply systems, including drains from carburetors, shall be designed and installed to minimize as far as practicable the accidental discharge of fuel into the engine room of structures. Where supplied by pumps, day tanks or integral tanks shall be provided with an overflow line, a high-level alarm, and high-level automatic shutoff. Overflows, vents, fuel pipings, or fuel tanks shall not be located at or near engine air intake, exhaust piping, mufflers, or filters. Where crude or residual oils are utilized as engine fuel, it is sometimes necessary to heat the fuel above the flush point for satisfactory handling and ejection into the engine. Next is filling. Integral tanks for gasoline shall be filled by a closed piping system. Exception, filling by approved safety cans when the engine is shut down. Integral tanks for diesel and fuel oils shall be filled by a closed piping system. Piping for day and supply tanks shall be in accordance with NFPA 30. Next is vent piping. Vent piping shall be installed in accordance with NFPA 30. Fuel piping, valves, and fittings. Piping shall be in accordance with Chapter 3 of NFPA 30, except that piping shall be steel or other metal, and the provisions of 6 to 7.2 shall apply. Piping system shall be substantially supported and protected against physical damage and excessive stresses. Sufficient valves shall be provided to control flow of liquid fuel in normal operations and to shut off the flow of fuel in the event of pipe break. Piping to above-ground supply tanks filled from tank cars or tanks vehicles by centrifugal pumps shall be provided with the check valves to prevent backflow. Transfer of liquid fuel to engines. Liquid fuel shall feed to engines by pumps only, except that gravity feed is permitted from integral tanks. Where engines are installed above the lowest story, cellar or basement, or on roofs, the fuel supply shall be pumped to day or supply tanks in an approved manner. Next is exhaust piping and chimneys. Engine exhaust discharge system shall be designed on the basis of flue gas temperatures. Exhaust pipe shall be of wrought iron or steel and of sufficient strength to withstand the service. Chimneys where required shall be constructed and installed in accordance with NFPA 211. Provision shall be made in exhaust systems to prevent damage resulting from the ignition of unborn fuel. Low points in exhaust system shall be provided with suitable means for draining of condensate. Next is the installation. Exhaust pipes shall be adequately supported and shall be connected to the engine or muffler so that emission of sparks, flames, or gas within the structure is prevented. Where necessary, a flexible connector shall be provided in the exhaust pipe from the engine to minimize the possibility of break in the engine exhaust system because of the engine vibration or heat expansion. This connection should not permit the release of dangerous quantities of gas into the engine room. Exhaust pipe, except as permitted in 1339.3.4, shall terminate outside the structure at point where the hot gases or sparks will be discharged harmlessly and not be directed against combustible material or structures, or into atmospheres containing flammable gases. Clearances from combustible material for low heat appliances. Exhaust pipes shall be installed with clearances of at least 9 inches to combustible material except as provided in 1328.3.2 and 1328.3.3. Exhaust pipes passing directly through combustible roofs shall be guarded at the point of passage by ventilated metal timbers that extend not less than 9 inches. 9 inches above and not less than 9 inches below roof construction and at least 6 inches in diameter larger than the exhaust pipe. Exhaust pipes passing directly through combustible walls or partitions shall be guarded at the point of passage by one of the following methods. Metal ventilated timbers not less than 12 inches larger in diameter than the exhaust pipe, or metal or borne fire clay timbers built in brickwork or other approved fireproofing materials provided not less than 8 inches of insulation between the timber and combustible material. So, exhaust pipes shall be connected to or pass inside of a metal, masonry, or factory-built chimney where the exhaust gases go through a floor, ceiling, attic, or concealed space. Where an exhaust pipe is connected to a chimney, a muffler, when necessary, shall be installed between the engine and the point where the exhaust pipe enters the chimney. If other fuel-burning appliances are vented into the same chimney, the engine exhaust pipe shall extend up in the chimney beyond any other fine connection. So, clearances from combustible materials for medium or high heat appliances. Exhaust systems for medium or high heat appliances shall be given special consideration as to clearances from combustible materials and as to design of exhaust and shall comply with NFPA 211. So, next is lubricating oil, crankcase, or oil reservoir protection. Crankcase or oil reservoirs shall be vented in accordance with manufacturer regulations and with federal, state, and local regulations. On engines where crankcase explosion can be a hazard, adequate explosion escape opening shall be provided or suitable means used to maintain a non-flammable atmosphere in the crankcase. Auxiliary reservoir oil supply chambers, if used, shall be vented either through separate vents or a common venting system. Engines designed to operate with a negative pressure in the crankcase and equipped with a separate lubricating oil sump shall be provided with adequate sized check valves in the venting system from the sump. Next is lubricating oil piping. Lubricating oil piping should be accordance with the provisions of 1328.1, 1328.2, and 1328.3. Safeguards for gauging devices. Glass gauges are side feeds for lubricating oil, the breakage of which will permit the escape of oil should be protected against physical damage. Operating instructions. Instructions for starting, stopping operation, and routine maintenance shall be supplied with each engine, and where feasible shall be conspicuously posted near the equipment. Emergency instructions. Where a fuel shut-off valve is used, a diaphragm with shut-off instructions shall be conspicuously posted on or near the valve. A safe distance from the engine or other potential fire location. Fire protection. Fire protection shall be provided in accordance with requirements of NFPA 101. Fire extinguishers. For liquid fuel engines, including LP gas in the liquid phase, approved portable fire extinguishers of appropriate size, type, and number shall be provided as specified in NFPA 10. For liquid fuel engines, including LP gas in the liquid phase, approved portable fire extinguishers of appropriate size, type, and number shall be provided. Reference publications. The documents or portions of this chapter have been reproduced from the NFPA 37 standard for the installation and use of stationary combustion engines and gas turbines. So that's all. Thank you.